Okay, in that first video, I talked a lot about the festival, or excuse me, in that first video, I didn't talk a whole lot about the Festival of Speed. I sort of let the video and the pictures do the talking for me. But because I know I'm eventually going to make a podcast out of this, I'll do some extended discussion at this point. So my initial impressions of the Festival of Speed were, I was just amazed. As an event, first of all, it's huge. The Goodwood Manor is quite large, and with my understanding is that the attendance is capped at 250,000 tickets. So that's a lot of people, but considering the size of the estate, it's not really that many. There were times where I felt a little crowded, but that was usually on the walkways, because they put in these aluminum walkways on the grass, because England in the summertime can rain and it gets muddy, so they put in these aluminum walkways to sort of corral the traffic, and so that we don't trample all the grass to death or make mud paths everywhere. So on the actual walkways, you feel a little bit crowded, it gets a little congested, a little bustly. But part of that is people standing on the walkways trying to take pictures of the cars going up the hill, and people stopping, and kids and all of that. But in terms of traffic flow, it actually does flow pretty well. But otherwise, there aren't a lot of places where you feel like there's a bunch of people on top of you. There's so much to do, and it's so spread out that you can go places and do things without people bumping and jostling you all the time. I had no problem with my cameras as far as people nudging me or bumping me. I managed to get a lot of clean shots. No, if you're trying to shoot the whole entire car, especially in the paddock areas, even with a wide angle lens, you need to be 10 or 12 feet back. So there's 17 people standing there trying to get the exact same shot. So in those cases, yes, there's a little bit of bumping and jostling, but generally people are nice. Now, as far as the paddock areas go, that's quite there's nothing like it. As you saw in the video, the Formula One cars, especially the modern Formula One cars, they roll them down. They can't have them running and just sitting there idling. So a lot of times they push those, and some of the big GT cars as well, they'll push them, and they don't start them until they actually need to start them, until they're ready to drive down to the start line. But other cars that are more production oriented cars, or cars that are being tuned or whatever, may be sitting in the paddock running. So there's all this noise. There's these engines. You got the Turbo Era 1.5 V6 Formula One car that they got the turbo. They've got it running, and they're trying to tune the engine. And next to it, you might have a 7-liter, Jaguar, and down the way you've got a 5-liter or 7-liter Chevy V8, and you got a motorcycle over here running. You've got a Can-Am car over there that's 12 liters or whatever. So there's just all this noise, and it's not always coming from the car that's sitting in front of you, which is, if you look at some of the videos I shot, these Formula One cars are being pushed by, but there's all this racket behind me, because somewhere behind me there's a car that's running with an open exhaust. And there's a I don't want to call it a class division, but there are definitely various grades of people at the festival. There are folks that are wearing more upscale clothing. There are people sitting in the reserved dining areas that are wearing suits and ties. There are other people that are, drivers walking around wearing racing suits. You got people in jeans and t-shirts, and a little bit of everything in between. There's a lot of carnival food and a lot of carnival atmosphere. So you may be at one stand getting meat on a stick and a bottle of beer, and you look over across the way and people are sitting down eating, truffles and lobsters and quail eggs and fine dining, so to speak. Now they're paying for that. The Drivers Club and some of those other internal areas within the confines of the festival are limited access, special passes, more money, etc., etc. But they are quite nice. As to the displays, the static displays, in some cases, the first year I was there, they had the Prost exhibit, and the Prost exhibit was incredible. Here you had, a Ferrari, a Williams, a McLaren. You had these cars that he drove, and just sort of in a static display in what I believe was the stables or the garden area, not in the main part of the residence. They were outside in a courtyard. You had the supercar paddock, which is a different experience altogether. With these fine Ferraris and Lamborghinis and Lexus LFA or whatever. Just really these high-end supercar exotic type things. And then further down, you've got these vintage race cars that have all this patina and rock chips, and they've been repainted a dozen times, and some of them decals are peeling off. They had the cars they brought over from Le Mans that they still had tire rubber on them. I mean, they still literally had all the schmutz and grime from the 24-hour race on the car. They didn't even wash them off, so that was just wonderful. As far as sitting in the grandstand, there are some places that are better than others. You kind of get the rubberneck thing where a car goes by and you crane your head, and the next car goes by and you crane your head, and the next car goes by and you crane your head. But if you sit further up, I think it's past the Molecomb turn, you sit in a grandstand that faces the course and the cars turn towards you. So you're sitting there and you got a really good shot of them coming up the hill. And in my case, I got a really good shot of one of the Daytona prototypes losing it and going into the hay bales, which made for really good photographs. And those are actually my 2014 materials. So when I get around to reviewing 2014, you'll see that then. What else can I think about? You had the flyovers from the British aerial teams, and so they had a bunch of cars that belonged to the royal family out there. That was really neat to see. Okay, let's talk about the rally stage. So if you go up to the top of the hill, you have the rally cars up there, and they have a dedicated special stage. It's got a launching area that's in the public, and then it goes down into the woods, and there are areas where you can see the cars between the trees, and that's really cool. But while I was up there watching the rally cars go through the trees, you're also directly next to the tail end of the hill climb, the terminal run of the hill climb, past the start-finish line up to the turnaround area. And they get all the cars up to the top, and then they bring them back down to the paddock, because the paddock's like halfway down the hill. And there's this incredible sound as these cars go by on their way back down the hill. So I was standing there watching the rally cars come by, and all of a sudden I hear the noise of a dozen or more highly tuned Formula One cars coming back down the hill at, they're coming down at moderate speed. They're not coming down at full speed, but still, that noise is just incredible, and it echoes through the trees, and you can't see the cars because of the hay bales and the trees and everything, but you can hear them, and they just make the most incredible racket. It's just amazing. And then the smell of that race gas wafts past you, and it was literally intoxicating. I paused. I actually stopped and recorded a message on my phone because I was so in awe of what was going on around me. And it really is, if you're a car guy, if you're a motorsports person, that is, it really is close to a religious experience. It's incredible. And I would challenge anyone that says that they love motorsports, especially the full breadth and width of motorsports, they have to go to Goodwood and experience that firsthand. It's I watched on TV this year, or streamed on YouTube, I guess, but streaming it on YouTube and watching the cars on the screen, that's an experience, because you sort of get the experience of every turn on the way up the hill, but being there in person is so much better. I can't describe it.